back to yet another episode of The Gloving Paradigm. I am your host, Peter, aka LPD8 Dubuque. And this week, it's going to be a very fun week for me because this is a question I get asked quite a bit while I'm in the Worldwide Glovers Discord chat, which if you are not on there, you need to get on there because that place is awesome. But one of the major things I get asked a lot from a lot of the members of the community, especially a lot of newcomers who are just coming into this, how do I find my gloving style? It's a very interesting question, and I'm so glad you guys asked because that is what this episode is going to be about. It is finding your particular style. Now, am I saying that you have to choose any of the ones that we have well established within the community? No, you can kind of create your own as well. There's no bona fide rules that say that you either have to do this or you're not doing it at all. Like, I don't know where people have got this idea from. It's so bizarre, but here we are talking about it. So, we're going to answer the question, what is the gloving style? And by my definition, it is an archetype that has a set of characteristics that distinguish itself from the basic foundational moveset.
What? Knew it. Stop letting him make you realize stuff.
If that doesn't make any sense to you. Don't know how that wouldn't make any sense to you, but some people have that kind of problem not understanding what I say half the time, which is understandable because I tend to ramble on about random crap all the time. So, yeah. Anyways, so there's your definition of a gloving archetype or a gloving style. Is that it is a very distinct and very distinguished characteristic that separates itself from just the generic foundational moves of just, what they are. But with that being said, what is it that we know about gloving styles? Well, allow me to first tell you that all styles really just derive from the foundational moveset. Like, if anyone sit here and say that this is such a unique style that does not follow any of the conventional movesets, they're lying to you, because no matter what you're doing, you're going to find the fundamental movesets that are in there. They are literally the building blocks of gloving, and so sitting here and taking that and chucking it out the window and saying, I don't need to follow that, you're handicapping yourself. That's just, you're cutting yourself at the kneecaps at that point. And I don't understand why there's this aversion to this, because they feel like they're conforming to something. I don't know. It's very confusing. But that is not what we need to get in here. But yes, all styles do derive from the fundamentals. It's why they're called the fundamentals.
It's funny because it's true.
But here's the thing. While there are so many similarities and commonalities between a lot of these different styles, such as, if you look at things like conjuring, impacting, yes, there are very similar things going on. But there is a level of distinction between the two that separates them. And that might sound hooey to you, but it's true. That's how it works. You can have a lot of influences from one particular style to develop another style, and yeah, you might have some problems where people are like, it's just this with this. It's just like, yeah, but so is this with this? It's funny how people have these kind of arguments half the time.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
So, with that being said, one thing I definitely want to stress, and I mean heavily stress with you people, when it comes to styles, not all styles are defined by the moves that they do. They're not defined by the stuff that they put into it. They are defined by characteristics. And what do I mean by characteristics? I mean, it could be, yes, through the movesets that you do, but it's also the configuration choices that you make, such as with conjuring, they tend to keep their fingers up below. That's a very huge distinction when it comes to conjuring. Yes, I know there are people out there that do above finger conjuring. I know. I'm just saying it's very common for that particular archetype to have them all underneath. I'm not saying that you have to. So, what are the ideas that I want to explain? So, yes, you have particular movesets, you have particular mechanics that you follow, you have particular sequences that a style can follow. But there's one thing that a lot of people don't talk about that kind of drives me up the wall because they don't sit here and think that this is actually a thing. for some reason. And that is behavior. There is a particular set of concepts out there and styles out there that operate on a behavior, not on a set of moves. You know, there's no defined parameters of moves, and there's no one way of going about it. It is literally the behavior you must emulate within your show to pull off the style, which would be probably a good way to segue into the next topic of what are the known style archetypes that we have within the Glovin community. There's a lot. Okay. So everybody should know the two classic ones that started since the beginning of time, which is Impact and Conjuring, which if you need more detailed stuff on that, I do have 2 episodes that you can go check out. There's one on Impacting and there's one on Conjuring. You will find them there. And I mean, I spend like an hour on each of those talking about that particular style and going, you know, knee deep into that stuff, so you guys should know what I'm talking about. But if you need to, go check those out. They do help. They go into well in depth on those 2 particular archetypes. But to summarize those 2 archetypes, starting with Conjuring being the umbrella archetype term that it is. Conjuring is any form of manual light manipulation, whether it's just you turning them on and off or just switching in between modes. That's Conjuring. Regardless of how you want to say anything about it, that is Conjuring as an umbrella term. Now, Conjuring as a specific archetype is where you're literally turning your lights on and off in conjunction with each other to pull off certain effects. So a very prominent characteristic when it comes to Conjuring is the whole distraction and misdirection. That's its whole thing. So showmanship being one of the prima facie examples and staples within Conjuring is that level of presence that you have. That's why magicians are so good at what they do, not only because they've mastered the technique to a certain degree, but they're able to perform as a person and not feel like some robot and allow you to draw your audience in and all that jazz. That's one of the things that I will say about Conjuring. In summary. Now, when it comes to Impacting, going under the umbrella term of Conjuring, yes, it is a form of manual light manipulation. Just like all the other ones that have that. They fall under that category. But what separates Impacting from Conjuring is that it's focusing on 2 lights primarily. Does it only focus on those 2 lights? No. But primarily, it's the thumb lights that they want to focus on. Now, as a caveat, do you have to do your thumbs in order to do Impacting? No, you can do your middle fingers, you can do your rings, you can do 2 sets of fingers if you so chooses. It just takes on a different look, okay? Okay. And so if you want to try finger impacting, as it's probably should be called, go ahead and try that. My recommendation, start with your middle fingers since they're the longest fingers and they stick out more, and when you actually go on high beams, it's actually going to give you that nice solid swirls and it's actually going to be really pretty. At least in my opinion, that's up to you. But yes, Impacting is more focusing on just 2 lights, but not only that, you're focusing on controlling your viewers' attention and bringing them about the space. You're focusing with a focal point, such as your thumbs. But the other thing that helps with that focal point mentality with Impacting is the contrast between the 2 lights. Now, I went into huge detail about this on the episode, but to summarize, do you have to use red and blue? No. The reason why people stick with red and blue is because scientifically you have the biggest contrast of lights with red and blue. Why? It's because red is the longest wavelength as blue is the shortest wavelength. See how that works? That's literally the level of contrast. It's both scientifically proven that their contrast is like that. Wow! So that's why we kind of stick with that. It's kind of one of the main characteristics is the contrast. Now, does the contrast fully define Impacting as a style? No. It's just a very strong distinction that people have identified with that archetype.
What? Knew it. Stop letting him make you realize stuff.
More details on that in my episode. Go enjoy that. But okay. There is one particular style that I want to cover really quickly, and I will tell you this right now. This is a very controversial style, and it's because of its nature. And this is the particular style that I was talking about earlier that goes on a behavior approach rather than set moves. Okay, and that is morphing.
Whoa, 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 Whoa. Whoa.
I can already hear a bunch of people yelling at me right now. It's like, you have no idea what are you talking about when it comes to morphing. Morphing is this, this, and this. Stop. Okay. Just stop. Morphing, why it's so controversial is because is very subjective of how people want to talk about morphing and what they consider morphing is. But morphing is a set behavior that when it's done right, your audience is going to sit there and be entranced by this movement of a constant flux of transitional moves.
Why would you say something so controversial yet so brave?
Now, what does this all entail? Well, there is a sense of perpetual motion that goes into it where you're constantly just keep going. You don't really stop. You just keep going. There's a feeling of a pendulum swing when you do certain concepts, okay? So if you're wondering what I mean by this perpetual motion that people always talk about, is, you're constantly going and you just keep this constant transition of happening where they don't really know if you're going into one concept or another or what all. But there's a effect that happens within certain moves that the best way I can describe it is a pendulum style swing where you kind of have this quick moment of stopping, but it just keeps going. You don't get this stop and it stays there for a while. Like it actually it still moves, and that pendulum swing kind of still keeps this perpetual motion. Again, I will cover morphing in its own episode because it's so controversial, it's so difficult to explain that it deserves its own episode. I will be working on that. Trust me. It's going to be a long one, but I hope I can do the archetype justice. Considering that people really say that I have a lot of morphing elements in my show as it is. Okay, that out of the way. We also have a particular style that actually utilizes your lights to a very extreme sense. And it's called teleporting. Now, I really want to kind of stress this out. I'm not a full-on expert about teleporting. We actually have somebody who I'm going to try to reach out to talk about teleporting so I can get all the information I need to talk about this archetype.
What? I knew it. Stop letting him make you realize stuff.
But what I can say is that there are two variants that I see when it comes to teleporting. You have static teleporting and transient teleporting. I'm pretty sure people are going to shoot me in the foot and saying why I'm coming up with these terms on my own. But guess what? This is how we're going to start defining ourselves and actually start to amalgamize our styles and our community as gloving as an art form. With that being said, teleporting utilizes your accelerometers in your lights to the full, not to the fullest extent, but it utilizes that as the feature, the thing that helps activate
That's true.
the style and get the style into full motion. Weird as I probably worded that, I don't know why. But with that being said, I'm going to explain the two variants that I know, or at least that I've seen and observed. So we're going to start with static teleportation. Now, what is static teleportation? It is a very simple concept. It's traditional teleporting. You have point A and point B, and you literally don't see the movement from point A to point B. So on idle, your lights are on. When you start moving, they turn off. So it goes bink. You know what I mean? As you're probably watching this on the YouTube channel, yes, you're seeing my hands move, but you're only seeing point A and point B being illuminated by the lights. You're not seeing the movement between the two. That is what I call static teleportation. It's because you're highlighting the static points, not the movement itself. Transient teleporting is the exact opposite. So on idle, your lights are off. In motion, your lights turn on. That is what I call transient teleporting because you are physically seeing the motion from point A to point B. You're not seeing the points ending because they turn off when you hit those points. Transient teleporting. That's how I call it. That's what I refer to it. Is that the actual term? Most likely not. But when I actually do a showcase episode on teleporting specifically, we'll actually clear that stuff out. But those are the two things I've seen the most when it comes to this archetype in particular. Not only that this is such a unique archetype because it utilizes the accelerometer features, and I call it the accelerometer style for a reason. Yeah. Now, I will certainly say, yes, we do have my particular style that I call phasing, which, yes, I will probably do. I think my next style, like gloving archetype episode, is probably going to be on phasing. I might as well just get that one out of the way because I get a lot of people asking me about it now, and people are actually showing interest, so I should probably do its own episode. But to summarize, it is a conjuring style archetype where I'm manipulating my lights but it goes way deeper than just changing from one mode to the next. There is a methodology behind it. So to summarize, is taking in conjunction your color sets, your flash patterns, and the modes that you're using all in one to come up with this cacophony show. That is what is known as phasing. And I'll go into that in another episode, but it's basically, on paper, it's just me literally changing my lights as I'm going throughout my show and just moving about and just doing my thing. And all you're going to see is these mode changes throughout the show, and it just phases through the show. Okay? Don't know how else to explain. That's basically the gist of it. But that's for another time. One thing I definitely want to talk about that I feel like it's actually developed more into its own archetype recently is creatures. Creatures is a concept, but if we talk about in terms of a style where you have a very creature-heavy show, what I'm going to call it is animism, or being an animist.
What is that supposed to mean?
Which I know if you guys look at the definition, is a spiritual practice where you think everything inanimate or animate has a living soul in it, blah, 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 blah. Go look it up on Google, you'll see what I mean. But in terms of gloving, I'm going to be calling it animism because you're literally animating your hands into a living being, basically. You are trying to replicate living organisms with your hands. Animism. And that's pretty much how I'm going to say it. Now, another thing I want to stress as well is there is a thing called platforming and clocking. I'm going to break this up into two separate things because, like how conjuring and impacting are, clocking and platform are very similar in that sense. What do I mean by that? So, all impacting is a form of conjuring, but not all conjuring is a form of impacting. Just like how all jacuzzis are hot tubs, but not all hot tubs are jacuzzis. Same thing applies here with platforming and clocking. All clocking is platforming, but not all platforming is clocking. Allow me to explain. So, platforming. Platforming is actually developed into its own style because it's just, it did. It's so wide open what you can do in terms of platforming that it should be its own style. So, what is platforming that I'm sure most of you know? To summarize, it is basically having your hands working either in tandem or in conjunction with each other at two different parts in the space doing random stuff, whatever that case may be. Now, what do I mean by in tandem? And by in tandem is that they're working independently to each other and not working together, but what they are doing is working with each other by nature. Does that make any sense? It you know, they're not intending on working to each other. It's just what they are doing just so happens to work together in tandem. Now, what do I mean by in conjunction? In conjunction is your hands are actually working together to accomplish something. So, for example, like clocking, this is an in conjunction style of platforming. In tandem style platforming is basically like patting your head and rubbing your stomach. They just work independently of each other, and sometimes they work together, sometimes they don't. That's kind of the idea when it comes to platforming. Now, why is clocking distinct from this? Well, first of all, clocking is a very specific style of platforming that utilizes 2 points, or two faces as I like to call it, or two platforms, whatever you want to call it. You have the face of the clock and the hands of the clock, right? Putting them together, you make the clock. The other distinction that happens when it comes to clocking being so distinct from platforming is that it uses the cause and effect mechanic to the fullest extent, in my opinion. So what is cause and effect? Cause and effect is basically, as Mez would do in his clocking, he will show you a clock, put the hands up. Now, if you're watching my thumb over here, that's waving around behind my other hand, I tap my hand, and it causes my index finger to start going down the face of the clock. Cause and effect. Wow! Now, what is it about clocking that makes it so distinct? Is that how it starts is that you get the clock shape, but you have to start it somehow, and that's known as the trigger, as Mez has popularized it. And the trigger is literally what my thumb is doing. It is causing the chain reaction of things to happen, a domino effect essentially. That's what makes it so distinct from platforming in general, is because platforming doesn't have to have this trigger, cause, and effect thing in order for it to work. Clocking does. Okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. Clocking has developed into its own style. If you watch any of Mez's shows, like, holy crap, this dude comes up with a wide palette of things you can do in terms of clocking. But it does distinguish itself from platforming in general because it focuses on the mechanic of cause and effect. You got to have that trigger to get the clock to start. You know, you wind up the clock to get it going. Get it? I really try, you guys. I really do. I'm trying my best. Work with me here. Okay. One thing I want to say in specific is that I want to say that storytelling, it's kind of its own archetype now. It is a style that really pushes itself beyond just, you know, just like how morphing is, it pushes itself into a style of behavior, you know, and it's not just you need a beginning, middle, and end. No, stop that. Just stop.
Stop it. Get some help.
Okay, that is the dumbest definition of storytelling that I keep hearing from people. Stop saying it. For the love of God, stop it. Okay, because me literally starting a show like this and ending it, I just did a beginning, middle, and end, and it drives me nuts when people sit there and say that that's all you need is a beginning, middle, and end. You are not defining anything else. That's
He needs some milk.
anyways. Storytelling has really taken on its own form of being its archetype because there are ways to go about it. Okay, yes, you need a beginning, middle, and end. That is pretty much every light show whatsoever. And sitting here and saying that light show is not storytelling because it doesn't have a beginning, middle, and end, I don't know where you're coming from then. I guess we're just not going to work well together then. That's what it is.
It is what it is. It is what it is.
But I'm going to sit here and say that when it comes to storytelling, there is a lot of things you need to take into consideration. Yes, you need to have a good intro. You also need to have a good hook to bring your audience in. Then you need an inciting incident to really get your complex concepts getting out there. You need to start rolling the ball. You need this level of progression where things build up and come down and build up again and come down. Like songs have those build-ups and drops and bridges and interludes and all that stuff and intros and outros, all that crap. Storytelling is taking that to its own distinction. And so I will sit here and say I would feel like storytelling it's its own distinct style. You know, visual storytelling, you know, kind of how that works, you know. But basically what I'm trying to convey is like, look at hip hop, all right? Hip hop is not only a musical genre, it's actually a genre of dance. You know, you have, you know, street dancing, but I kind of lump hip hop with that because that's kind of where, if you guys know the history of hip hop dancing, then you will understand. But hip hop has, as an umbrella term, has so many different styles within it. You have things like whacking, you have popping and locking, and you have animation, and you have stomping, and you have whatever. You know what I'm talking about. There are so many different styles out there now that are fallen within the hip hop dancing archetype. It's the same kind of idea that I'm trying to convey here. Okay, gloving is pretty much its own thing, and it has its own variations of stuff within it, just like how hip hop dance does. So, what is it that one needs to do to find their own style? Well, if you like any of the established archetypes out there, go for it. You can't go wrong. There are plenty of people who enjoy doing it too, and there are plenty of people you can talk to help yourself get better at it. But if you're somebody who just like doesn't want to follow any of that stuff, you make your own. That's totally fine. I made up my own. I call it phasing, and people are starting to gain interest in it, so I'm going to have to work really hard to cover that episode. I'm probably going to have to spend an entire week working on it. Who knows? But yes, you can come up with your own style. And there are various ways to go about it. So allow me to sit you guys down and enjoy this little story time moment with me, because it's kind of funny that last night, at the time of this recording, that I was talking to somebody on the Worldwide Glovers Discord chat, which if you're not on it, you need to be on it and get on there. Okay, just get on there.
Just do it.
Okay, you know, I will even put the link somewhere. Look around somewhere. It's gonna be here. Anyways, yes, I was actually hanging out with somebody who's been doing this for about, I want to say within a year. I think he said 8 months exactly. I don't remember. Juicy Fruit, you know who I'm talking. You know who you are. And you know how long you've been doing this, but you're the one that kind of helped me with fortifying this topic. So I want to explain this little story. So he comes to me asking, he wants to incorporate this idea within his show, and he wants to kind of say that he wants to call it marionetting, which If you guys don't know, marionette dolls, they're little puppet things where you hold the little sticks and then they do the little dance thing. Like if you watch Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, he's kind of replicating the behavior of a marionette doll, where he's like literally just hopping around and his hands are literally bouncing around and stuff like. You get it? So he approached me about like, hey, how should I go about trying to incorporate this idea into gloving? Well, let's look at the behavior of a marionette doll. If you're watching on YouTube, I am literally trying to do the thing. If you know how marionettes dolls work, they kind of have that idea. They have this little bounce pop thing with their bodies, right? So how do you incorporate this? So what we were doing is like just figuring out how our hands can kind of go limp. But he wanted to incorporate this behavior into his fingers and bring it down to that micro level of his hands. Well, you can't really do that, right? You can't really do that with the hands. You can't just fling your hand and get that same effect. So how do you go about doing this? After some thought, he kind of came to the realization like, hey, how about popping my hands? Because they will naturally retract, right? There we go. We just figured it out. We sat there and took fundamental rules such as popping to replicate behavior from an outside source, such as marionette dolls. The whole popping thing. I know this is so convoluted. I'm trying so hard, but please work with me here. So what did we do? First of all, we delved into other archetypes out there to try to find the thing we needed to figure out to replicate this behavior. So we started looking into it. We started talking about popping and locking and animation and things like that, because he really wants to try to incorporate animation into his show. Don't blame him. Think it's a brilliant idea. Go for it, man. But we were trying to figure out what it is that makes this so distinct to itself. And that was the characteristic that we're looking for. And what is the characteristic about marionette dolls that make them very distinct and very recognizable to the audience? And it's that whole wow thing where they kind of bounce up and down, where they're getting plucked by the strings, they're plucked along type deal. They have that little bouncy effect with their hands, and they kind of have that moment of relaxing and kind of like bouncing around. That's the characteristic that we wanted to define into gloving. So that's how we kind of created a style called marionetting. If you want to call it puppetry, then you could call it puppetry. I want to call it marionetting because puppetry is pretty much what Puppet does in his shows. The whole this kind of thing where you're moving one. I feel like that's puppet. Marionetting is very distinct from that because of that whole distinct thing that marionettes have when they move. Okay, not all puppets have that. Hand puppets don't pull that kind of effect. Marionettes have this very distinct and recognizable movement set that he wanted to put in, and that's how we came up with it, is using something like popping and locking to actually pull this off. And that's the funny thing is that people don't realize that's how it works. That's how you need to go about coming up with a style, and that's how we did. We did that within 30 minutes. We figured out how to come up with the mechanic to create the behavior. There we go. Now, okay. So, to me, things that are not considered a style, because people want to sit here and say that these are a style. First of all, tech, which is shorthand for technique or technicality, depending on which description you want to go with. I do not sit here and say it's a style. It is a method of how to go about your show.
Say what?
It's a technique. You have to find the technique. Technique is not a style on its own. Flow is not a style on its own. You can have a tech-based show, you can have a flow-based show, but they cannot literally be a style on their own. These are the pillars. They literally are spread across all the styles. So sitting there saying that these have to be a style, it's wrong. No, they're part of your foundational thing. It's why I have the Archetypes of Gloving 101 called the pillars, and they're part of that. Again, another thing I will say, showmanship is not a style. However, it is a characteristic within styles that I feel is extremely needed to pull them off. So yeah, I just want to stress that those aren't styles, those are parts of styles. And I don't want to sit here and sit there. And I know some people are going to like, oh, what about musicality, Peter? Musicality could be a style, right? No, musicality is a method. It's a mechanic that we use. It's a model that we can follow. Just like how we can follow tempo, and then we can follow musicality. This is going to be one of those long ones, aren't they? All right, we're going to keep going. But you know what? Here are some notes to consider when it comes to finding your style, growing your own style, coming up with your own style, developing a style, period. That there's many commonalities between a lot of these styles. And that's because if you see all these commonalities stretched out, that's usually the fundamentals that you're seeing. Do you have to have these characteristics embedded into every single freaking facet of your show in order for you to have that style? No, you don't. And I don't understand why people sit here and say that you can only be considered a morpher if you morph throughout your entire show. That is not true, because there's so much room for expansion and be able to pull off this behavioral morphing that you don't have to be set in this confined space in order for it to be pulled off. And it drives me nuts when people sit here and tell me otherwise. So yes, there are many commonalities between all these styles, but it's the subtle details that really distinguish them, and that's what really that's what happens when it comes to these styles, is that these subtle distinctions and differences that happen are magnified tenfold because of all these commonalities between them, and that's what makes them really push out. These subtle differences become more prominent because of that, and that's something you need to understand, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But anyone who has listened to this channel slash podcast slash whatever you want to call it now long enough knows the word I'm going to drop next. Deconstructionalism is your best friend. Why? It's because you can take any of these styles, break them down to their bare parts, and re-amalgam them together to make your own style. Again, like my marionette style example that I just explained, we deconstructed other styles to figure it out. We went through different methods to figure it out. We went, through creatures to figure out how to pull this off. And what we figured out is through a illusion effect of popping and locking. Yeah, that whole pop, being forced first and then relaxing, was able to actually create this illusion of that whole bounce effect. See what I mean? So you guys understand, when it comes to deconstructionalism, it's literally just taking a style and breaking down the parts to its bare parts. This is a part. This is a part. I am now moving these parts to see how they work together. Deconstructionalism. But okay, what is it that we have learned today when it comes to finding your style? Well, first of all, you have plenty of different styles to choose from. You don't have to create your own. If you really like impacting as a style, go for it. It's a very difficult style to master because there's so many subtle nuances within it, but go for it. There are plenty of people who know how to do it, and there are plenty of people out there that will teach you. Conjuring is the same way. If you like this whole, I want to distract and misdirect my viewer and do some really crazy things that are rather entertaining, go with Conjuring. If you want to have a very hypnotic, entrancing style, try morphing. Platforming, you can kind of get away with that too. But you have all these different styles that you can choose from. You don't have to do it with set moves. You can come up with a style that focuses on the lights and what the lights are able to do. And you have styles that work off of a single behavior. You have different ways to go about it. Another thing that I like the idea of people who want to come up with their own style is that they are exploring. They are looking for the things that they are looking for to create this thing. They are looking for the things that they like, and they're getting rid of the things that they don't like. Not only that, is that you can come up with new concepts, and they'll be rough as hell, but working with other people are going to help you clean that up. And it's one of those things that it's just going to take time, people. If you're dedicated to either learning a style or coming up with your own, is going to take time. So patience is a huge key factor in all of this. I think that pretty much covers everything I need to cover in this episode. I certainly hope you guys enjoyed what I had to say about this particular topic. I know a lot of people ask me, what kind of style should I go into? You gotta figure out what you like. What is it that you like in gloving that you really like to do? If you really like doing a lot of liquid concepts and stuff, go with that. If you like impacting, go with impacting. If you go into styles that you find out are not really working for you, that's fine too. Here's the thing I would like a lot of my listeners, at least, or viewers, to understand, that when it comes to delving into styles and finding out that they're not for you, there's a learning experience that you just got from that. You'll learn what doesn't work for you. But I'm sure you might find something within those styles that stuck out to you that you do like. Take those. Take the stuff that you did like from that style and bring it with you, because you're going to start forming your own style. You're finding what you like to perform with as a performer, and hopefully you're going to reevaluate what you're doing from the responses of your audience. Now, you don't have to follow everything that your audience tells you to do, but if you're trading with other glovers and they're trying to give you ideas to help further what you're trying to do, take that advice. Ask the questions you need to ask. If you're in a lab session, like, so you're in the Worldwide Glover Discord chat with me and you have these questions, I'm going to be here to help you. That's what I do. But I do have various other places you can hit me up at if you have any questions that I did not cover in this episode. You do have my Facebook page, which is aptly named The Gloving Paradigm. You also have my email, which is muttonchopguy@gmail.com. I'm also on Reddit under the username muttonchopguy. You can hit me up there. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can leave me a comment down below. That never hurts either. And of course, I do have my own Discord server if you want to go hang out there. No one really does anything there. I tried. Nothing. It never pops off. But Worldwide Glover Discord chat has been working well for me, so if you want to hit me up there, you can. I'm always hanging out there anyways. But of course, as much as I don't like talking about this, I'm going to do it anyways. If you like the content that I make and you wish to help further the content I make and make it better, please consider supporting me on Patreon. As low as $1 a month goes a long ways to getting closer to my first goal, which is $1,000 a month, which allows me to do this full time, blah, 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 blah. Other than that, you pretty much have everything for my episode. I do hope that you guys enjoyed what I had to say about in this particular episode. I certainly had a lot of fun talking about it, especially when I was working on it last night and talking to another member of the community and actually helping him come up with a particular style that he wanted to try out, and is now working more into it and actually trying to develop it and expand it. Yeah, it's fun stuff. But of course, you have all the various places you can follow me on. All my social media stuff is going to be linked down in the description below. You can always hit me up there. You can always follow me on Instagram. That's always fun. You guys can just look at pictures of my dog or some random light show videos I like to post there. It's up to you. But yes, I think that's pretty much all for my episode. This ran for a super long time and it's going to take me a long time to edit. So we're going to have a lot of fun with that. But yes, that is all for my episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and enjoying yourselves with this kind of content. But I am your host, Peter, aka LPD8 Dubuque, and I'll see you guys all next week.